Hi, everyone. We're going to get started on the next session. Welcome. I'm Anthony McCosker. I'm a Chief Investigator in the ADM+S Centre and Director of the Social Innovation Research Institute at Swinburne University. Our team, who I'll introduce in a minute, has worked with Australian Red Cross Humanitech, who I'll introduce in a minute, through our Phase 1 Centre projects, where we've been exploring and establishing a model of community-centered data mapping for disaster preparedness. So thinking about how do we actually create this community-centered approach? And this session should really follow on from our co-design session in the last panel. This work aligns with international humanitarian approaches to building community resilience that Australian Red Cross has really pioneered through its Ready Communities programs and through other means. So it's my great pleasure, huge pleasure, to chair this panel. We have a few people online who I'll introduce in a minute. But I'll introduce the Humanitech team, who have supported some of the most innovative technology projects to address disaster preparedness and community resilience in Australia in recent times. So we have Julia Goodall in the room here, and we have Emil Theodoro, who is online and will appear in a video, and then at the end for our Q&A. And we have Imeshi Wirasinger from our technology partner, WEO, based in Brussels, and she'll be presenting via video today as well. I just want to say there's a big team behind the scenes, both on the ADM+S side and Humanitech side. So I'll just throw a call out to Sophia Pellet in the Humanitech team and Katie Southall, who many of us have worked with for many years now. In our ADM+S team at Swinburne, we have Yongming Kang, Tracy Dakota, Kath Aubrey, Dom Carlon, Zafar Razul, and from UQ, Aves Hamid Khan, who's over here as well, and you just heard from. So the focus of this panel is on the Dargo pilot of the Humanitech platform that was co-developed by Brussels-based tech company WEO and the Dargo community members. WEO were the winner of the 2024 Resilience Challenge and were funded to co-develop the platform with community members in Dargo, Vic, and Victoria. And Emil will talk a little bit about the important community context for this pilot and the process of community co-development, with some input from Imeshi about the platform itself. Julia will talk about the organizational support for and context for the platform that has to be in place for this kind of work to happen. And it's really important to think about that kind of institutional context for the development phase and for sustainability and scaling of these kind of platforms. I'll talk through our evaluation findings, which is a work in progress, so bear with me. It'll be a little bit of thinking out loud and thinking through how we understand and do the research around the impact and the outcomes of this kind of work. So hopefully this answers some of the questions from the previous panel as well. The pilot is really interesting. It tests a technical solution to the urgent need and the ongoing challenge of incorporating what we refer to as local knowledge into and open data as well into the development of analytic systems and AI systems so that the two can work together more effectively. In this case, as an accessible disaster preparedness platform, but there's all sorts of applications that we can think through these kind of issues. So why does this matter? This is really a case study, I guess, of the benefits and challenges of community participation. This is the thing that I am constantly trying to think through. How do we develop digital and AI capabilities within communities, the technical capabilities, but also human-centered capabilities as well, for social good and for social benefit? It's where, I guess, theory meets practice. in creating scalable impact in the face of climate risk in this case. But we have all sorts of social risks and problems that we might deal with through these same sorts of processes. The opportunity here is really about moving beyond tokenistic community consultation. It's never completely tokenistic, but I just want to put that word out there, to thinking about what genuine co-design is and how it might play out and how we can assess it and evaluate it in practice. It's really differentiating superficial stakeholder engagement aspect from embeddedness in place, importantly, and partnerships with local people, local organizations, local institutions, thinking about literally the terrain in which the technology might operate. This connects closely with our critical capabilities for inclusive AI project, which is one of the ADM+S Centre's signature projects for its phase 2 project round. This pilot has tested the idea of inclusive AI as not just managing bias in data sets, the things that we think about in a technical sense, but also creating the wholesale conditions in which AI can create real capability gains. And that's the element that we're really trying to focus on and center and think through today. But also thinking about the factors that need to be in place for the technology to improve lives in terms of what people most value and what people need. And this is the ongoing challenge of technology development, as we know. What I'm going to do now is just throw to Emil and Ameshi via a video that we have lined up that they have developed. And Emil's going to give us a bit of a context about the development of the platform and do a bit of a demo and show you what it actually looks like, how it's been developed in practice. And Ameshi will talk about it a little bit from her perspective as well. So hopefully this just magically works. Yep.
Hi, I'm Emil. I'm the Australian Red Cross Resilience Officer leading the Dargo Community Climate Adaptation Pilot. I'm also a proud member of the Dargo community, which makes this project especially meaningful to me. Over the past 6 months, I've been working closely with the community to explore how we can use technology and local knowledge together to strengthen resilience in the face of increasing climate-related risks. Before we dive into the pilot platform itself, I'd like to set the scene, why we started in Dargo, how the pilot came to be, and why this work is so important right now. Communities right across Australia are dealing with more frequent and more severe climate-related emergencies. Bushfires, floods, storms, many leaving lasting impacts long after the headlines fade. Now, there's more risk-related data available than ever before, but it doesn't always reach the people who need it most. And even when it doesn't always come in a form that's useful on the ground, in the moment, or tailored to the needs of remote or underserved communities. The Dargo pilot set out to change that, to explore how data and technology could meaningfully support communities to become more prepared for climate-related events, with local input shaping both the tool and the process right from the start. Dargo is a small, remote Alpine town in Victoria, with a population of just 105 people and an average age 20 years senior of the national average. It's tight-knit, it's resilient, and it's faced its fair share of fire, flood, storm and drought, often in quick succession. This is a community that already knows what preparedness looks like, but like many rural towns, they haven't always had access to digital tools that back up that knowledge. What made Dargo the right place to start wasn't just the high risk profile, it was the community's openness to trying something new. They have a strong sense of what works and what doesn't when disaster hits. Beyond that, Australian Red Cross had already been working with the community through the Ready Communities program. That program gave Dargo a shared language and understanding of resilience and provided the perfect foundation to begin the conversation about the co-design of digital resilience building tools. This pilot began as part of the QBE Accelerity Challenge, a global partnership between Australian Red Cross, global insurer QBE, and the tech accelerator leading cities. Together, the aim was to surface scalable solutions for climate and humanitarian resilience. In 2024, satellite analytics company WEO won the humanitarian track. Their proposal, an AI-powered satellite-informed mapping platform that could visualize hyper-local climate risk and support community-led disaster planning. Thanks to funding from the Coca-Cola Foundation, Dargo became the first community to pilot the platform. But this wasn't just about testing a tool. This was an opportunity to ask, could AI and satellite technology be made useful and relevant by working directly with the people who could actually use it? So we set out with intent to listen. In a series of community co-design sessions, we sat with the people of Dargo and asked, what matters most to you? How do you currently prepare? And what kind of information would actually help to prepare for an emergency? These sessions uncovered the local priorities. They helped test assumptions and they directly shaped both the content and the design of the platform. More than 45 community members contributed. They flagged a range of information they'd want access to, from roads that become impassable during storms to areas that are densely populated with at-risk cohorts like campers or tourists, to black spots in mobile service and locations of community-owned assets like generators or public Wi-Fi hotspots. They also challenged assumptions around the language used, the way risks are categorised, and how they want to receive information. We synthesised these insights and we listened and adapted. The platform was simplified, categories were relabelled using community-friendly language. The interface was refined to present outputs in a way that made sense for the Dargo community's unique risk environment. What we ended up with is a tool that visualises everything from fire, flood and heat risk to emergency assets, assembly areas and socially significant sites. The AI model then reviews the risk profile and then passes back recommendations for manual intervention in a way that's actionable and locally trusted. But just as important as the platform itself was the process, the experience helped build confidence in the community. Residents began to see that data and AI aren't something that just happen to communities. They're tools that can be shaped by communities to serve their needs. Trust came from being transparent, from iterating in response to feedback, and most of all from following through. We trained local product champions, respected go-to community members who could help others navigate the tool and answer questions. The training embedded knowledge and confidence in the community. It sent a clear message. This isn't something that's being imposed from the outside. This is yours. That's when the mindset and community shifted from this is tech to this is our tech. So what did meaningful co-design look like in Dargo? It looked like conversations that challenged assumptions. It looked like edits, revisions, and honest feedback. It looked like handing over control and staying curious. The Dargo pilot shows that co-design isn't about ticking a box. It's about embedding local insight into every step of development and being flexible enough to change course when the community asks you to. It also tells us something bigger. When we center community voice and combine it with the right tools, we don't just build platforms, we build trust, capability, and resilience that lasts long after the pilot ends. So now that you've seen how the Dargo community helped to shape this pilot from the ground up, let's take a closer look at the platform itself. What you're seeing now is the WEO platform in action. It opens with a map view, familiar, easy to navigate, and tailored to this part of the world. We can zoom right in to see details for individual locations, whether that's a home, a hall, or a key community asset. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see the layers menu. This includes layers that relate to insights around fire risk, flood-prone areas, vegetation health, and more. One of the more powerful features is how the platform uses satellite and AI to present insights into flood risk, heat risks, and fire risks. But the real magic? It's what the community added. Let's take the Dargo Hall, for example. We can now see that this sits both within a flood risk zone and a high fire danger area. This information is critical when planning community events or assembly options. This all started with a data-rich, expert-built platform, but it didn't reflect the lived reality of a place like Dargo. So we asked the community, what do you need? And they told us. They wanted simpler map layers grouped by context. They asked for local names and landmarks they actually recognise. They wanted hazards sorted clearly so they could act with a focus on the risk profiles that were meaningful to them when needed. And WEO responded. The interface was redesigned to be easy to use. Navigation was simplified, putting key hazard types like fire, flood, heat front and centre. Community-informed layers were added too. Community-owned generators, assembly areas that have been designated by locals, public Wi-Fi and healthcare sites, roads that often flood or become impassable, and areas that get busy with tourists or other at-risk groups. So how do people in Dargo actually use the platform? Ahead of bushfire season, they can check risk levels near key assets. When storms are coming, they can see which roads might be blocked or which routes to avoid. Newcomers or volunteers, they get a snapshot of key risks, assets and assembly areas in the area. Community groups use the insights as justification to plan projects, prepare funding applications or brief others. It's not just what the platform can do, it's what the community asked it to do and how they intend to use it that makes it work. Technology only works when it's shaped by those who live with the risks. And in Dargo, that's exactly what we've seen. Insight, ownership, and a platform that reflects the people behind it. Now, from Dargo in Victoria, let's jump across to the other side of the world, to Luxembourg, to hear directly from Umeshi Weerasinghe, CEO and co-founder of WEO, our tech partner in the pilot, about what it really takes to make satellite data meaningful at a local level and how co-design with the Dargo community reshaped their entire approach. But before we jump into Umeshi's video, I have to apologise that the start of her video was cut off in transit, so you'll just have to excuse that. Over to you, Umeshi.
CEO and co-founder of WEO, a company that transforms satellite data into environmental intelligence to help cities, communities, and companies build climate resilience. In most places, our models work very well at scale. They can show broad trends in vegetation, flood risk, or urban heat. But that's not enough when you're working with a town like Dargo, where resilience depends on very local details, like which bridge might flood first, or which roads people rely on to evacuate, or where the nearest community-defined assembly area is located. One of our biggest technical challenges was making the data meaningful at that level. It wasn't just about accuracy, it was about relevance. Satellite-derived insights had to be grounded in local knowledge so they reflected how people actually move, decide, and prepare. Through the co-design process, we blended AI with lived experience. That meant reshaping data layers, simplifying language, and incorporating critical local infrastructure. By doing that, the platform became not just a source of information, but a tool communities could use to make real decisions before, during, and after an event. The hardest part for WEO has been to ensure that the technical features of the platform truly reflected what the community was telling us, integrating those hyperlocal insights while still building a platform that remains scalable and adaptable. This experience has fundamentally reshaped how WEO designs for impact. It's shown us that the most powerful data tools are those built not just for people, but with them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to Emil and Umeshi. If I press this, will it play again? No, there we go. So I'm going to throw to Julia now, and thanks, Julia, for being on stage for 2 hours, including the last panel. Yeah, I hope that you can talk a little bit about the institutional context and the humanitech context for supporting this work, and what's at stake, and what those processes look like.
Thank you. Very happy to. And I think a project like this is amazing work out on the ground. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the behind the scenes and how we kind of work within an organization to enable some of this process to happen. So Humanitech is a very small part of Australian Red Cross, where we exist to kind of convene between tech startups doing great things and humanitarian practitioners doing great things on the ground, and supporting them to actually be able to work together to do things directly with communities. So we play a number of roles in the pilot. And the first one, is, as Anthony said, is building the institutional trust to make this happen. It's really hard doing co-design because it involves giving power over to the community, which is something humanitarian organizations hugely value. In practice, though, it means that everything from deliverables, perhaps even the problem you're trying to solve, it can all change as you go through the project. So we play a role in kind of bringing together all the different parts of the organization, as well as funders, technologists, all sorts of different players together to kind of be able to solve these complex problems. As I mentioned in the last panel, to sort of set up a different way of doing project governance so that we allow for flexibility and adaptability. And we spend a lot of time talking to our leadership and our executive, as well as our teams that are working with communities on the ground, to try and build an understanding of how we can go forwards together and what we could achieve. I think secondly, a key part of what we do is when we're looking at using ADM and AI-enabled tools, we play a role in making sure they're grounded in really safe principles, not just community involvement, but also safe and ethical principles in terms of how the tech's designed. So we play an intermediary between WEO and the community, but also our IT departments, our legal departments, all the researchers that are giving us great advice on how to make this technology safe and how to protect data, and making sure everyone can understand in simple language what we're trying to do around protection and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. Um, I think an example of that is we've just put a new disclaimer on the platform to try and help people using it to understand the limitations and the level of accuracy and all those kind of things. That, of course, comes from our fabulous legal team in really strong legal language. And it's such a small part, but it takes co-design even in that to try and make sure that's understandable for the people that are actually reading it and using it. Um, and then I think the biggest role we play is in mediation and trying to develop a shared language and a shared capability. We work bilaterally and by bringing people together to make sure that the team at WEO feel really well supported and resourced and able to do their jobs really well, to understand all the different needs and when we need to slow down and when we need to focus on building trust within community versus when we need to focus on development. And then similarly with the community and through a meal, really building trust in the process and building an understanding of the technology um, to the level at which people can really actively and confidently participate in the design of it. Um, and I just wanted to highlight as well kind of where we're looking to go next with it. So it's always really exciting doing a new pilot, but the humanitarian world is full of exciting pilots that haven't gone anywhere next. So the other key role we play is in trying to design for scale from the outset. Um, and that is everything from setting up systems to make sure we're learning and evolving as we go, of which partnership with ADM+S is really critical to. Um, Also, having a plan for, we've designed and tested this in one community, so really starting to unpack what have we learnt that is replicable across broader communities and what is going to be localized? What's the redesign we're going to need to do in every new community we go in, and how do we create funding models and partnerships and all the things that are needed to make sure we actually can scale this more broadly in Australia and hopefully beyond. Um, and lastly, how we take the lessons that we learn in a pilot like this and through the WEO project or the Dargo project, how we take them into a broader policy and advocacy discussions and make sure the learnings aren't just informing this piece of technology, but we can inform um, how technology is used and designed across humanitarian and government and all sorts of different social contexts. Um, yeah, I might leave it there and
Yeah.
take some time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Now, I'm going to try to talk through our ADMS team and evaluation process. So this is we're doing this as an independent piece of work, but as a collaboration as well, in order to pull out those highlights, those insights, those scalable elements, those lessons that we can take from this project into other work and hopefully inform future humanitech work. So our team has been involved in several stages of the resilience challenge, including helping to develop the problem statement that was around that local knowledge, community knowledge, and how to integrate that with a data product, essentially. But also then working with the startup teams in terms of the curriculum and how they can develop what they do and how they can see co-design as an important part of the process. And finally, our involvement has been through a process evaluation. And process evaluation is different to an outcomes evaluation. We're not at outcome stage yet. The project is still ongoing just for a little while longer. So our focus has been on the process. This involved a platform analysis and field work that included workshops with the operations team from Red Cross and from the broader Red Cross group, as well as the Humanitech group, and with the developer team, and time in Dargo, beautiful community, doing interviews with local community members around their experiences of the co-design and the platform itself. Now, our evaluation framework, I might just see if we can pop this up. You don't have to read all of these words. I'm going to work through this one slide. The evaluation framework that we developed is drawn from our work within the Critical Capabilities for Inclusive AI project, as I mentioned before. And inclusive AI is this work in progress framework that we're still working on, that involves guiding the design, development, deployment, and governance of AI systems to accommodate social diversity and improve human capabilities. And the capability component is really important. I'll try to get to that. The framework that we're developing takes a holistic socio-technical approach. So there's a bucket of assessment and metrics elements around the around the questions of safety and fairness and how we evaluate that are more technical usually, and a bucket of questions around accountability, a bucket of questions around participation, around benefits, around accessibility and usability, and around affordability. And what we've done with this evaluation of the pilot is mesh those with the key evaluation targets from Humanitech, from how they evaluate their projects. And we're focused on these 4 key questions around safety and accountability, community and stakeholder participation, community benefit, and sustainability and scalability. I'm going to try to run through our top level kind of findings so far in these areas. So firstly, with safety and accountability, in speaking with the operations team, the tech developing team, and community members, some really key things came up around accuracy and reliability. And we know that these are factors of data sets, of model training. And we did have some interesting conversations about the difference between European vegetation as part of a training data set versus Australian vegetation, and whether that maps or doesn't map accurately, and what effect that has on outcomes. And that's all really important. But there's other aspects to accuracy and that are really more important to locals. And that's really, does this map to my experience of my terrain, of my home, of my property, etc. So what we kind of got to is this idea that accuracy and reliability is really achieved through a practice of triangulation. And this is where the feedback loops that are developed through the co-design process and built into the co-design process are really important. So Ameshi, who heard from, said it best. I'll just quote her. She said that the automated satellite image analysis is powerful, but she said if the model doesn't spot a tree in someone's backyard, then there's this level of trust that's lost immediately. And it really helps to have someone on the ground like Emil who can verify and help adjust the AI satellite analysis. It's this concept of triangulation that I think is really important and often missed as a key component of what a co-design of a technological project process is. At the same time, accuracy in community data systems, this is really important for the community, can impact privacy and autonomy. And this is where our kind of legal analysis or the legal and ethical analysis kind of comes into play. So another another key point here is there is a tension between accountability and accuracy, and there's a bit of a trade-off in this sense. So in this case, the team made the decision to set 150 by 150 edge hexagons as the unit of analysis, but could have gone much more tight and much more defined than that in order to avoid singling out dwellings or individual residents or households. And this would have then an impact on potentially on insurance issues and all sorts of features about visibility and over visibility, etc. Now, in terms of explainability, which is another key aspect of this bucket of questions, community members, this has not been built into the AI and the decision making yet. It's a bigger project. It's more costly. It's more difficult, as we know. But community members were less concerned about explainability of the AI models, more concerned that there was an adequate mechanism for feedback loops. So a way to respond to errors, to add in local insights. That was the focus for them. Now, community and stakeholder participation is the power move of this pilot. I have to say, it had a far longer than usual co-design period. And as importantly, it had a local community connector in Emil as a central team member. So he was part of the Humanitech team. And this is something that comes up, just a nod to Daniel's team in the mapping the digital gap work, in the work that we do in remote communities. Having local team members is essential. Now, inclusion of hard to reach people in the community was hard, difficult. It's always difficult. But one thing that I wanted to point out about co-design is that it's really important to have this connection and deep involvement of people who are closest to the issue, who know about the issues, who are most likely to be affected or to be able to affect change in the community. So we're not going for representation or, an essential, tokenistic representation in terms of the co-design and participation process, but essentially people who are able to affect change and people who are able to connect with everyone in the community. And that's absolutely the situation that happened. Part of the process is about training community champions to then have an ongoing role in maintaining and engaging with the systems. Now, I wanted to get to the other points here, and I'll try to do this quickly. But there's a lot that we can say about community benefit. We saw, when we spoke to people in the community, we saw substantial diversity of perspectives on the benefits of the platform or the potential benefits of the platform. And this is where we need more research, in my mind. And maybe it's just the research that I like doing, so I'm just emphasizing it. But everyone has a thought and a say on benefits. And actually, when we talk about co-design in terms of communities and technologies, and communities need to be, we need to work at the pace of communities and sometimes slow things down. Actually, often community members work really fast, and the technology development is achingly slow and difficult. And the things that they want implemented or tested or experimented with take hours and hours of developer time to even trial or test and then break and then start again. So there are some important trade-offs here. Just to flag a few examples of what happened in this space in terms of that diversity of benefits. Community members were very focused on real-time information, particularly on roads, and this couldn't really be included in the technology as it was set up. It's actually a really elusive component of most emergency systems. And this is something that I think all technology in this space has tried and failed to really do well. There's one road in and one road out of Dargo, and it's a windy road through the mountains in the Alpine region, which I should have mentioned. And it's crucial that that knowledge is available when it needs to be. Um, there was also from the bush nurses in the community, they wanted detailed information on vulnerable people, which is something that's really important for them to map so that they know who needs to be helped in times of crisis or in moments of emergency. But this kind of knowledge that they had, that they could embed in the system, would then involve a different layered level of access that isn't impossible to do, but it was out of scope for the way that the technology was set up. So there's this tension around what it does and who it does it for. Also, there was a bit of a surprise around for the developer team around the important knowledge set around tourist movement in the area. This is a town of 150 odd people that swells to about 3,000 people in any given day because of tourist movement through the town, with huge numbers of really hard to manage processes of communication around risk and emergency and things like that. I just wanted to flag the importance of also of this idea of local knowledge. Community were in the co-design process were really placed a hugely heavy focus on the system's ability to interact with local knowledge, and these are people that have been in this on this land all of their lives, who know it intimately. They know that if there's 20 mils of rain in this part of the mountains, it'll flood here in exactly 25 minutes, So this is the sort of knowledge that they wanted to incorporate. So as an example, and there's a bit of a tension around this with technology that automates decision-making. As an example, Ash, this is a pseudonym, is one of the designated champions. He's a SES volunteer and has deep local knowledge. He, along with others, questioned the model's outputs. He said if someone's been in the area all of their life and they've seen plenty of fires come in, 90% of them will follow the same path. So there's no point having your SES trucks over here where the risk model says this is going to be at risk. But he was committed to helping to inform the model, saying that you need to have their models, but you also need to have local knowledge. So that the benefit and the capability gain really comes in that interaction, in the way that those two things interact. And that's the thing that we often forget when we prioritize and highlight the AI, the benefit of AI. And I just want to say one last thing about sustainability and scalability, and we'll have some questions, and we'll hopefully get to throw to Emil as well. With sustainability and scalability, they really pull in two different directions at once. This is part of the problem that we have with technology development, and Julia, I'm sure you can attest to this one. Sustainability relies on the hyperlocal aspects of technology. Its applicability to the material conditions in a community. It involves volunteer input, ongoing relationships, engagement, and even the development team were emphasized that if no one is engaging with this system, it can't do what it does. It can't continue to learn about local conditions. Scale, on the other hand, is about funding models, of course, but also it's about standardizing features, and it's about, standardized code constructions, and it's about platform interoperability and data stewardship and model stewardship and all of these kind of things that are not necessarily about hyperlocal. But I'd say that scale is kind of more than a business model question. In that sense, it's really for a system to capitalize on and mobilize local knowledge. I think the point is that scale lies primarily with voluntary willingness of community members to remain engaged, to support iteration, to be part of the process, even if there isn't a transaction payment, a reward for doing so, but just that it's that has the possibility of ownership in that sense. Okay, I'll stop talking there. We started a little bit late. I'd like to thank all of the people in Dargo for their involvement. And thanks, Emil, for jumping online for us today.